Hello and welcome to the business of the business. I am your co-host, JP John Poz from the Two-Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me, my co-host, the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, what's going on?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. March is moving along. I'm rocking the Jeff Jarrett Lucky Horseshoes hats today, especially since I had lost it for a little while. So bringing it back into circulation as it gets sunnier.
Love that. It's very, very cool. Now, obviously, our guest will be here in a little bit, so we won't go too much into too much of the Spanish or the luchador stuff as far as that is concerned. Let's go right into New Japan Pro Wrestling. What is going on with their last show? How did Resurgence do?
Yeah, so to put a little bow on it, last time we recorded, I think right before it was going to take place, or maybe a day before. So we have the final numbers from WrestleTix 2,834 with a setup of 3,000. And like we talked about last time, a Monday Night Raw with staging can put about 8,500 in the building. I don't know the costs involved. I mean, that's the key here. But in terms of a draw, the number of fans in the building for New Japan, which in terms of U.S. promotions being able to draw, you'd have to put them, in this limited basis as about number three, right? Of course, after WWE, AEW could certainly peak. They've had their struggles, but New Japan really showing their strength here. One of the things I was curious about was Gabe Kidd had like a fire interview on local television, um, sort of bashing WWE and AEW fans in his own special way. So I was like, is he going to talk people into the building? Apparently not. So even though it got a lot of play on the internet, um, I think it was only, actually here, plus 77 tickets from the last update that WrestleTix had. So people that wanted to go were already going. People that enjoyed his interview weren't necessarily in the position or weren't necessarily motivated to go, depending on where they were. So I think all in all, a win for them. Unfortunately, from what I understand, Eddie Kingston got hurt, but New Japan, like we've talked about, I think that this is the best rhythm for them. Do these 4 or 5 semi big shows a year in the States. Team up with AEW as long as that lasts for the once or twice a year. That show that AEW does in Washington State, that's sort of like an Inoki branded show. That's like a little bit awkward that it's not with New Japan, but it doesn't seem to be an issue because they continue to work together.
To me, do you think New Japan is kind of, I don't know, not star power driven right now? Like they lost their stars. Obviously, Jay White's gone to AEW. Will Ospreay's gone to AEW. Okada was their big draw. He's gone to AEW. Tanahashi obviously is getting older and not kind of what he once was. Obviously, his prime was amazing, but we're well past his prime. Seems like Moxley, Riddle, and Ziggler are like their big draws, and they're all gaijins that primarily wrestle here in the States. Is that a problem for New Japan Pro Wrestling?
I don't follow closely like day to day or so to show to like take the temperature of things, but if they have, and he's unique into himself, Gabe Kidd, if they have unique people like that coming up, I would say like that's could potentially be more appealing. You have that New Japan brand, so as long as you don't overexpose it, you have to be careful not to. That will be a draw in some respects, but you have to have people that people want to see. I think for those from English speaking countries, like there was like Jay White or whoever it may be, where there's that certain like appeal, like oh, okay, like they're they're Irish or they're American or Canadian, whatever, but they wrestle primarily in Japan, so it's exciting when they come here. Whereas I think like a Matt Riddle, he's on everything from and right potentially NEW to MLW to New Japan to whatever is going on in Trenton, whatever it may be. So it's not necessarily special. Sometimes you have to have like a little bit of that sauce. Moxley, I think there's more of an argument for because he is like all in. Is he still the world champion? Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
yeah. So he's like even though we know him as AEW and obviously WWE well before that, but he is their champion. So like it's different ways of thinking about it. But I think there's certainly a talent challenge, and they're collaborating in Japan with a lot of different promotions. Maybe they can do some more of that here in the U.S. in terms of bringing in unique talents from Japan or from around the world. So yes, there is a problem. I think it's one that they're aware of, but in terms of their recent draws or gates, at least here in the U.S. for the level they are, I think they're doing well. We'll save the Fantastic Mania talk for hopefully a little bit later with our guest.
What about Adventures in Carneyland? What about the NWA? What about Billy Corgan?
So for better or worse, John, I had one night this week where like I was just stressed out and I woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't sleep. So my first thought was to be like binge watch Carneyland. So I went out into the living room, and this, I don't mean this is a bad thing, because when I really enjoy a show, I usually fall asleep. I even used to fall asleep during Pride pay-per-views. That's when I learned to record them so I could come back. So I was in that rhythm where I was just enjoying it and I was able to fall back to sleep and then go back. So it was a lot better than I was expecting, and I did enjoy it. I thought it was just going to be like Billy Corgan is brilliant and like his promotion is so successful. The NWA is number one, but really, it was kind of showing that Billy Corgan wants his employees to be better promoters. And we had a former guest on, Kyle Davis, and his colleague Joe Galley, who are, from what I understand, the main like full timers, off screen and on screen for NWA, in terms of like office workers and so on. Whereas like they're painting the picture that they're not so into like promoting events, whereas there's this other guy, and sorry, I don't have that name in front of me, but who like Corgan feels would be a great promoter, but he's a pain to have to deal with. Like he has a big ego or whatever. So it's showing some of that comic. So it shows like basically every show is like every episode is basically another NWA show that they're doing, and they show you the audience and so on. So I'm halfway through. I mean, we could tell in real life, like it didn't come to a resolution that they're a big promotion now, but they're chugging along, and even they seem to be getting their momentum back in some ways. So definitely enjoyable. Did you have a chance to see any of it?
Not yet, but I do plan on binging it. Are all the episodes available, or they're just doing a new episode a week?
No, they all dropped at once.
Oh, okay. I'll definitely binge it then. I'm definitely interested.
On the Roku, I downloaded the CW app, search for Carneyland, and
Nice.
one flowed into the next. It's just it's a little, I mean, whatever it is, but the CW app, it's a little bit annoying because it's sort of like there could be like a 4-minute break in the middle. It's like watch old episodes of Dawson's Creek. And which I liked the show at the time. I'm not going to, there's no shame in that game, but it's kind of like annoying to have to like sit through that. But I was going to say they have to pay the bills, but basically they're just advertising their own programming. So I don't know how they make money from it, but there might be actual commercials. I just don't remember. But Corgan was out there for all the promotion, and this was a curious thing. I just signed another TV deal, which I haven't announced yet. I saw someone in wrestling media wave off the NWA success, but I don't know a lot of companies out there that have 3 television deals as an independent, solely funded by me. So the first thing that I was joking was that, do they even have 1 television deal? I guess it depends how you define it, right? Being on the CW app, is that television? And having 2 shows on the CW app, if that's what he means, is that 2 television deals? I guess the bottom line is that if they're getting paid to produce such programming, then that's what matters. But TV is less so, obviously, in the years since we followed media, but it's still a mass media outlet, whereas downloading an app is something else entirely, unless it's Netflix or whatever. So I just signed another TV deal, which I haven't announced. I saw someone, okay, let's see. We're really fighting a lot of wars here, not only to create a wrestling product that fans like, but also to beat the world's perception that it can't be done. That unless you have $1 billion in your pocket, you can't manifest enough energy. But what people don't understand is I'm one of the only people in the world who understands how to take something literally from nothing and take it to the top of the mountain multiple times. I know it can be done with faith, dedication, and hard work. It'll be interesting to see the behind-the-scenes stuff going on, which, by the way, is not work, but true and honest stuff that is happening. I insisted on real and organic storylines. It'll be interesting to see if people perceive that as integrity or weakness on the part of the company. I think it's a strength because we have nothing to hide. So, by the way, John, I will see the Smashing Pumpkins in concert at the
Whoa.
Mets Stadium, but not because
Wow.
I want to see the Smashing Pumpkins. I'm a big Green Day fan. So Green Day are
Nice.
the headliners, and they are for their anniversary. They're doing the whole Dookie album, and one of the I don't know if you consider opening acts, but semi features is the Smashing Pumpkins. So I'm not sure how early I want to get there, um, but uh, but now I'm curious to catch some of that too because when will I have the opportunity to see the Smashing Pumpkins again as well?
Was it expensive, those tickets?
Mm, not too much, I don't think. I'm looking up the if I have a receipt while we're talking. Um, your Green Day order. So no, 80. Well, I got the cheapest ticket, basically, the upper deck. So it depends what you consider good prices, but it was $83 total, including
Oh, that's not
expenses.
bad at all for concerts
Yeah,
nowadays. Not bad at all.
yeah. So oh, I'm sorry. I'm totally off. You know what I was looking at when I went to a Green Day concert in 2017.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So let me see here. Wait, it's going to be like triple the amount. 128 bucks. So
still not
inflation,
bad. Still
yeah,
not bad.
inflation almost double.
Not bad. I saw Metallica last summer. I think it was 175 a ticket. So they're getting crazy. They're getting expensive.
Where was it?
Giant stadium, 80,000 people on
Nice,
hand. That was nuts. And they ran one day, and then 2 days later they ran again. I didn't go to that one, but they ran again. They did 80,000 people again.
nice. I saw Springsteen there a couple times.
Oh, nice. Me too. I've seen him there too. Nice. I actually saw the last ever show at the original Giant Stadium, the
Oh,
one that
nice.
was decimated. Yeah, it's still the last show with Bruce. Um, as far as Billy, did you mention did they get another TV deal or no?
Yeah, so that's what he was saying that sort of like highlighting in these interviews that he got a third TV deal. But it's sort of interesting, as I mentioned, the way you look at it, like is being on the CW app a TV deal? Because I'm not aware of any TV deals that he has thus far. Not to be snarky or whatever, but I guess it's just a nuance of how you think about like what's a TV deal, what's not.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. What about MLW? What is going on in the world of MLW?
So hoping to talk with our guest about this soon as well. But MLW is really, we're talking about like what are they and so on, what do they need for the marketplace. I think their rhythm and momentum that they're finding now is sort of, I guess this was promoted Lucha Azteca, so it was a Lucha show, but generally their relationship with CMLL, like it's bringing in Lucha fans to a degree. They announced that Cicero Stadium was sold out with 2,104 plus, which I think is, probably a reasonable or accurate number, just by the setup of Cicero Stadium, which I love the look of it, like the long bleachers. But for the next show, which I assume was a similar setup to this one, Lucha Apocalypto, you could get a count of the reserve seats. So that was 446 reserved, maxed out, plus GA, plus bleachers. So 2,100 is probably a reasonable number. Court also did an interview with Alfred Kanua. A lot of people are familiar with his work from Twitter of constantly shading AEW and promoting WWE. But a really good article. For a small promotion like MLW, survival is the name of the game, and Bauer has done that better than most in his position. MLW routinely sells thousands of tickets for its live events. That might be a little bit of exaggeration. And is currently enjoying a fruitful partnership with Triller, where the promotion will air tonight's premium live event, Azteca Lucha. So at that time. How would you grade MLW's year in general? This has been the best year in MLW history. We're the crown jewel of Triller Plus with our premium live events. We're doing great with our Hot Topic partnership for apparel, and our action figures are sold out. We're trying to speed up the next shipment from China, but they're saying it's going to be mid to late summer. Then we're sold out for every show of 2024. So to go through an AEW arriving on the scene in 1819, then the pandemic, then to have some complications with media rights, I think you really learn what a company, its team, its roster, its entire organization is about if they can pull off the bounce back. And this year has been our best year in the history of the company, dating back to '02. So that means an extraordinary accomplishment. That's not something that happens overnight. It's a lot of diligence. It's taking adversity head on and being able to find a path forward and emerge from it and be a better company for it. And so you can't chart a path through that. You can only go through it and have a great team and the wisdom of those people involved and help you get there. So we are pumped for the next 6 months because the first half of the year, it's been awesome. You mentioned bouncing back and the record-breaking toy sales. What are some of the other metrics? We're doing great when you look at BN Sports. We've become their crown jewel, and we do monthly specials with them, and they've been awesome. So we look at that. We look at Triller Plus, and when our premium live events drops, they're the most replayed, top trending in the library, which is great. Triller does everything from boxing to soccer to wrestling, bare knuckles. So to see such a big impact there is awesome. They've been great partners, and be able to provide fans live, premium live events every month, I think was something that the fans have been asking for years from us. And so to now give them something every month, well, you get a lot out of it. You have a lot of surprises, a lot of shocking returns, debuts, crossovers. Every show we're dropping something exciting. So that's been the key. But look at everything. You look at the totality of all the data you have, from attendance to royalties, hot topic, to people that want to come to the table and do new deals and exploring those opportunities, and being able to say, okay, can we go into the big shows and big markets? And the answer is resounding yes. Selling out Tampa, having not been there for 21 years, going back to Chicago after half a decade and selling out half a month in advance. It's pretty compelling and it brings a lot of excitement to the company. And man, we're excited to go out there in Chicago and give them a show. They've been waiting for us for half a decade. AEW is in its contract year with their TV deal. It's the biggest year in the history of the company, no matter how you slice it. This is Alfred saying this. So in a parallel universe where maybe AEW doesn't get that deal, is that something you're looking into? Are you looking to Warner Brothers, WBD as a potential television partner? It's funny. During the pandemic, we actually met with David Zaslav, number 2. We met with David Levy and Bruce Campbell at Discovery before the merger, and we were progressing along exploring future Discovery. Then, boom, the merger happens. Zaslav pulls off the unthinkable. So 6 degrees of Warner Brothers Discovery. There had been prior to the merger discussions and looking at exploring stuff like pro wrestling because of their connection with owning Eurosport. Prior to the merger, there had been discussions. Presently, I believe that there's Warner Brothers Discovery. AEW is an exclusive window of negotiation. So they have to go through their process, and everyone has to respect it. For us, I think it's a really important thing that you look at how intoxicating media rights are, and they're an important piece of the puzzle. They are a critical piece of the puzzle. However, you also have to realize that as you see what's going on with regional sports networks, you're seeing so much disruption. So a very deep article. So I recommend that everyone goes and finds it.
When you think about MLW, do you agree with everything they're saying there? Biggest year, best on Triller Plus. I always thought GCW was the crown jewel of Triller Plus.
Yeah, that would have been mine. I think Court is a promoter.
Yeah.
First, so
yep.
There's always different angles and ways to look at things. It's not always that it has to be numbers to numbers when you're hyping or promoting something. Not saying that it isn't, but yeah, I've actually commented on the show before that you don't see that much about MLW on Triller when those shows drops. Whereas, at least in my feed, and sometimes it's self-fulfilling, very self-serving, that GCW is always like talked about when they have a show on Triller, even one that's like lower profile or it's their second or third show of the weekend. In that rare circumstance that people are still talking about what happened at a GCW show, whereas I don't see that with MLW. But I guess the as the relationship continues with Triller, that will be, the proof, right? Will they still be on there in 2025? What will 2026 look like, and so on. With BN Sports, they've lost a lot of distribution. Years ago, when WrestleNomics had the numbers, they had MLWs drawing between like single digits thousands and low, near 10,000s. And we know BN Sports is, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, the lowest rated channel that's rated by Nielsen. Now, there's some channels that aren't measured by Nielsen or just too low rated to be rated, right? So So when they draw 2 or 3 thousand viewers in prime time, obviously that's very low, but it's higher than others. So if MLW can, whatever they do, right? If they double it, triple it, quadruple it, that makes beIN Sports happy. And obviously something is going well because they have these expanded specials, and they're also able to put them on YouTube. I think YouTube is behind a paywall, but to take content of something that you have, I think if I'm understanding correctly, take content of something that you have first on Triller Plus, and then you could use it as a beIN special. You could sell it on YouTube, and then maybe you could even take it and use it as part of your programming on beIN and however else you're distributing. So a lot of different ways to maximize content. But what else? The action figures, I don't know like what the run was like we talked about. It takes a long time to make an action figure, and most of the talent is gone. But if they're selling them, they're selling them, and that's their product, so that's good. I don't know with Hot Topic if it's in stores or it's just on the website. You don't see as much. I guess malls aren't around as much, but you don't see as much about Hot Topic as you used to. Even going back just a few years to the Young Bucks having their merchandise in Hot Topic. But if
Yeah.
it's working, it's working. But it should be the best year, especially if there's that reported $20 million. By far and away, it should be their best year yet.
So speaking of the crown jewel of Triller, what's going on with GCW?
So GCW has a few announcements. So they're going to be in Louisville. I think last time they were just a few years ago they were over the river, not in Kentucky proper. So they'll be at Headliners Music Hall on July 18th. I tweeted out a joke where I put, that Paul Heyman Sandman and so on sitting at the WWF show in Philly with their tickets, so that maybe we'll have like Al Snow and Mr. Spectacular sitting front row at the DCW show. I know Brad and Al a while ago were snipping at each other over like what hardcore wrestling was.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't expect any disruption at the show. It'll probably just be a show, but good to see that they're going to another market. And they return to Toronto on July 5th, which I thought was really interesting because July 4th, I think traditionally is their backyard barbecue. Michugats, craziness that in a secret location or wherever it is. So I'm wondering if they're going to do that again this year and then pack up and well, they could do it in anyone's backyard, but I feel like it was in New Jersey a lot of times. And then have a show in Toronto. You could do it for sure, but I'm just curious to see how that affects the July 4th show because that always seems to get some buzz.
What is going on with the Savoldi Wrestling Library? I love this stuff. I love these old wrestling libraries.
Yeah, I mean, you can find a lot on the internet, but like as WWE doesn't owns a lot of libraries and content and doesn't invest so much anymore in sort of like expanding that to a big degree through Peacock and so on, that these libraries are becoming even more important. Ultimate Classic Wrestling. So this is Dennis Carluzzo's NWA promotion from New Jersey. I think great Brian Last of 605 Podcast, of course, Jim Cornette Experience, was the photographer. The videographer is like a teenager for some of these shows. I've seen some of these shows on YouTube. They're fun. So it includes NWA title reigns of Candido, Dan the Severn, Ogawa, and Gary Steele, Grand Slam 4, Eddie Gilbert Memorial Brawls, and so on. So just like fun content, and it seems to fit on this streaming platform, which, and I don't mean this is a bad thing, it's kind of like, lower production quality, but fun independent shows or like semi-territorial promotions, depending on what the Savoldis have owned or licensed. It just seems like fun. I know that part of it is free, so I did want to download the app and check it out sometime, but I haven't yet. Now, in your journeys in New Jersey's independent scene, were you going to shows? Have you ever been to a Carluzzo show in like the mid to late 90s?
Honestly, I probably haven't. I didn't even realize I was, but I definitely have because we used to go to so many shows. around that era. So I definitely was. I can't think of one that I was at, but I definitely went to them because I recognized, like, obviously all the names and all the talent and some of the matches and some of the guys. So I'm definitely going to have to watch some of that just to kind of try to relive it and pick out, hey, I was at that show.
I think like one of the underrated things is the consistency that Dan Severn gave to the NWA title when like they didn't have anything to go on. The fact that he held the belt for years and would still do shows, even though he had UFC success, and, probably I'm not sure actually at the time, but the bigger profile shows made more per shot, with MMA, but he did a lot of small shows too. But I guess it was a mix of his income and earnings because he was always out there. But I think like he was just so legit. And even now, thinking back on it, it stands up. Obviously, it didn't lead to a lot of success for those local promotions at the time, but it led to a Raw appearance and all that. So just a fun time. Love to see content resurfacing.
Now, what in the world is going on with AEW? It seems like AEW is about to pull a WCW and maybe do a residency somewhere.
Yeah, this caught me by surprise. And look, how many weeks have we been talking about like stop doing NBA arenas? If you can only draw 2,700, 4,000 people or whatever it is. So here they're not completely stepping out of it. I think their Dynamite shows are still going to be wherever they'll be. Those haven't been announced yet, but All Elite Wrestling Summer Series headed to Esports Stadium Arlington. This is from a Dallas media source. The series will feature a month's worth of events from July to August ahead of AEW All In at Wembley. AEW World Champion Swerve Strickland will manage with manager Vince Nana. There's been a cultural renaissance in pro wrestling. With interest spiking around the world, the city of Arlington wanted to get involved and join the forefront of the industry's innovations. It will get to do just that this summer when AEW partners with the city to present AEW Path to All In Summer Series at Esports Stadium Arlington, starting Saturday, July 20th. The summer series of events, a residency of sorts, will feature a month's worth of shows from July to August as the city plays host to the final weeks of the build-up to one of AEW's biggest shows of the year, All In. There's always been a great affinity towards pro wrestling around Dallas, and recently pro wrestling has been hot nationwide. The folks in Arlington have given us this amazing opportunity to bring this series and our top stars right there to Arlington. We hope to build this summer series into something very special. Esports Stadium Arlington will be the home to AEW Collision, which airs on Saturday nights. The arena will also be hosting various Ring of Honor events, another promotion under the AEW umbrella, including Death Before Dishonor. The building is the largest dedicated esports stadium in North America, making Arlington a global destination for competitive gaming events, but it's also hosts events such as PFL in 2022. This is a partnership and this is a deal where we felt like there was some great opportunity to showcase not only that building, but showcase Arlington. We came together on an agreement that's beneficial for them from a financial standpoint, but also beneficial for us in that we feel we're getting a lot of run on the Arlington name, and that's something that's very important to us, our brand and our identity as a city. We're continuing to emerge as a destination city. So here, it seems to demonstrate that AEW is getting paid. We came together on an agreement that is beneficial for them from a financial standpoint, unless it's saying like that the building was rented at a reasonable price or whatever it may be, but it seems to be paid. AEW State in Arlington does come at a busy time for the city. This part I found most interesting. In addition to the Rangers hosting the All-Star Game, A&T Stadium will return with Mike Tyson taking on Jake Paul. So really interesting development. And, we've been talking about them booking smaller venues of such a size, maybe a little bit bigger. But here, if potentially the city pays you to do it, and it's a busy time, I don't think you could be there forever because, interest starts to dwindle. But if you have like major events coming to the city, maybe you can draw a little bit from the All-Star Game fans and Mike Tyson fans or whatever it may be. So certainly worth trying. I don't think continuing to run 20K buildings twice a week or whatever it is was a recipe for success.
All right, Lavie, joining us right now is one of the men behind Max Republic. Have to say this, but maybe you have to take this out. But he's one of our favorite guests, if not our favorite guest.
I'll take it,
Mr. Kevin Kleinrock. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Just don't let Brett hear that, right?
Yes. and actually, you're gonna like this. I can't let somebody else hear that either. Your old nemesis, the Disco Inferno, because he gets mad every time you come on the show, how come he doesn't come on with us? Oh, he's too big for us. He's too important for us. Yeah, he's not happy about it either.
I do miss my weekly Keeping It 100 appearances. My schedule just got so insane, and they record kind of a little bit randomly, and the middle of my you guys are out there on the East Coast, so I'm able to get this in early in my day, but my days are fairly insane lately. So
yeah. So what's going on with Mass Republic?
Oh, what's not going on with Master Republic? I think that the big new exciting latest thing for us in terms of merchandising is the announcement that we are launching a comic imprint called Master Republic Comics, which is on a publisher called Massive Publishing, who really have become one of the hot publishers in the industry over the last few years. And so we're excited. We're launching with the Luchaverse Catalyst story event this July, which you can order now from your local comic shops. I think that's one of the big things for us. Like, we started this journey in comics and with the Luchaverse about 5 years ago, but we were doing everything direct to consumer. And our partner at the time, Cheeto Comics, had kind of gone into certain comic shops and placed comics, but there wasn't a way to kind of from any comic shop on earth order Master Republic comics, and now there will be. So we're super excited about that. And then later this summer at San Diego Comic-Con, we'll be announcing a second series. And so that's been pretty busy for us on the what we call the Master Republic studio side of things, as we build out content in publishing and television and film. And on the live event side, I know you guys mentioned, I think it was last week, and I appreciate that, the success we had with our Cinco de Mayo weekend kind of mini tour in California. And actually, it looks like the venue that we ran Thursday night, the Garden Amp in Garden Grove out near Anaheim, they want to have us back on a regular basis, hopefully. So that would be cool, because we did, as Lavie mentioned, wrap up our run of 9 shows at the Agua Caliente Casino, which was great for us over the last number of years. And hopefully we'll find another family-friendly venue in that area, because the city of Cathedral City, which is kind of that whole Indio Coachella Valley area, they've been so supportive of us. And then Ruben's actually in Dallas, Texas right now, because we're kicking off our tour over the summer with a company called Social House that puts on these taco and tequila festivals all over the country. The growth has been amazing. 2 years ago, we did 2 dates with them. Last year, we did 3 dates with them. And this year, they've got 7 dates, 6 in the U.S., plus we're going to Winnipeg. And these taco and tequila festivals they're so interesting because it's obviously Hispanic themed in terms of taco, tequila, bringing in lucha. They do like a Chihuahua cosplay dress up contest, like a Chihuahua fashion show. But all the music is like 90s and 2000s throwback hip hop. It's like Ludacris, Ashanti, Exhibit. But it's a great mix. They do 10,000 plus at each of these events, and so it's great exposure for us for the Master Republic brand. And so if you're in the Dallas, well, I guess people will hear this on Monday, but check out our social for where we're coming. We're going to Chicago, we're going to Milwaukee, we're going to Kansas City, going to like I said, Winnipeg. So yeah, check it out. I guess that's the latest and greatest.
Love that. Is Lucha Libre a big draw as far as mainstream wrestling? Because I saw MLW had a show in Chicago, which was obviously lucha centric, and that was kind of like their best drawing show that I've seen. So is Lucha Libre a big draw as far as just mainstream wrestling and even wrestling in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, it's a little bit market by market, right? Chicago obviously is a top market for Lucha Libre, and I think that there's lucha in Chicago every weekend. So I think really that combination of a little bit bigger brand than MLW, not kind of your local indie. Obviously, it was a very CMLL centric show. A lot of the talent from CMLL, and then the right market. So right promoter, right stars, right market, and they had their best ticket sales to date, I think. And so I definitely think that that's something that is important to have all 3 of those things. But I think I think we maybe touched on this in a previous appearance, but like you've got Pro Wrestling Revolution out here in the San Jose area that run like San Jose, San Francisco, all throughout the Bay Area. They're running Stockton coming up, and they do 1,000+ people at every event they do. But because they're kind of known as a Lucha Libre independent promotion, they don't really get mentioned, in the observers and the, Fightfuls, and people don't really. It's not really on the radar. I don't even think that WrestleTix, tracks their shows. So Lucha Libre and the right markets can draw, and their model has really not their model. What they've proved to me over the years, Gabe Ramirez, the promoter, he'll put on the same card in a market like Salinas as he will in San Francisco. But in Salinas, it's 95% Hispanic families. And in San Francisco, it's like 50% Hispanic families, 50% hipsters, punks, people that want to go out for a cool night of Mexican culture. So I definitely think that there are a lot of promotions who could be taking a page from this, but I also think that, we live in a different time than we did even 10 years ago. And you see great luchadors mixed in with GCW, I'd say a good 20% of their roster, on certain cards is luchadors that they're bringing in from Mexico. And, there's a lot of indies that, when Vikingo, before he got hurt, was working all over the country, going in for House of Glory over here, going in for Northeast Wrestling over here, going in for, AAW. So I think that, we're in a period where people do recognize the value, at least of the hot up and coming or the hot kind of current luchadors, and then certain promotions really can play off of either the nostalgia, bringing in the LA Parks and bringing in the Hoovies or Psychosis before he got hurt, and then others are just bringing in AAA talent or bringing in CMLL talent. There's a number of indies out there that have a relationship with AAA or have a relationship with CMLL and just pack their upper cards with that talent. But again, I don't think a lot of them really get covered by anyone but like Lucha Blog, maybe,
Now, Lavie has been chomping at the bit to get you back on and ask you some questions. So, Lavie,
Yeah, I keep adding questions as you were talking, which is great. But first, I just have to get out of the way when you talk comic books. Okay, WCW for Marvel or Battlemania at Valiant, which is the best?
What's funny because, I think I saw some of those WCW comics like back in the day. But I literally just the other day was like, I should probably try to collect that whole set now. Just like, now that we're kind of trying to be the evolution of, wrestling comics. Because that's one thing that like, I think is really important for people to know and understand about our comics is that they're not wrestling comics. They're not comics about fights in the ring or, what happens behind the scenes in wrestling. You've got some really fun comics out there that have done things like that. Michael Kingston's Headlocked is like, I think the epitome of what a wrestling comic can be. We are more taking a page from the Lucha Libre film genre. We are taking our luchadors, real luchadors like Rey Mysterio and Tenebros Jr. and the Lucha Brothers and Solar and Super Astro and Conan, and we're putting them into more traditional comic scenarios, action adventure, horror, intergalactic confrontations. And so that's what we're doing in our world, and trying to kind of laying the groundwork for this really expansive, it's the reason we called it the Luchaverse. It is a kind of expansive universe that will run through similar kind of to, if you look at how Marvel built up to the Avengers or how they did their Netflix series, like each luchador story is kind of in a different genre. But anyway, going back to your question, I think those WCW ones will always have a place in my heart for how just unbelievably cheesy they were on so many levels. So I'm going to go with that one. And I've been looking on eBay. Nobody on eBay seems to have a complete set. And I might shudder to think how expensive it would be if they did. But I've had my eye on, this guy's got 4 issues. This guy's got a few issues. So.
So I've been still kicking myself. You might have seen this tweet a couple of years ago. It was listed, it was relisted for months and months. So I was like, wait, maybe they'll drop the price or whatever. For like $350, $400, they had original WCW piece of art, the original art, and had both Vader and Rick Rude in it. But my kids were right about to start yeshiva, private Jewish school tuition, and I don't know how I would have justified it to my wife.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's that would have been something. But yeah, I'm in the same position right now. I've got 4 kids, and so I like my eBay shopping has significantly dropped. I'm like, I need to be a responsible parent here.
So I'm going to I have some questions that are more like for you as a consultant. So let's say, not to give away your advice for free, but let's say like some of these organizations contacted you at your, what I'm assuming, $900 an hour rate, and like what would you advise them? So like let's think about it like this. So with CMLL, I think one of the things that could be a possibility, although things could be going so well in Mexico, maybe there's not a reason to do this. I feel like a high class 18 show tour where you book like nice theaters, 1,500 to 1,800 seats, with good like expensive prices, but you bring all the bells and whistles, like the genuine like experience with you, and you sell merchandise through 18 cities once or twice a year. You get in, you get out. Do you think there's like a market for something like that?
How do I answer this question? I absolutely do, but that's all I'm going to say right now, because you might want to have me back on in 6 months for us to continue that part of the conversation.
Okay, we'll want to have you back on. Now, can we scoop like and we love her like Denise Salcedo and Fightful and so on, because then Fightful could pick up our news rather than us seeing the wonderful news.
I will promise you that for this particular topic, when things materialize, which might actually be sooner rather than later, and I'm not talking about anything directly related to CMLL, but I'm talking about everything else that you just said. I will come back here first, and I will talk to you first. But I think you said something kind of in passing, but I think is really important for people to understand. CMLL does not want to be in the business of promoting shows in the United States. They own their buildings in Mexico. They have a whole circuit in Mexico. They make their money. The people that own CMLL, this is not their primary line of business. They own tons of businesses, and they are very well off outside of Lucha Libre. So the U.S. has always, I believe, been seen more as a burden than an opportunity. So they're happy when AEW comes along and wants to, use their talent officially and call them CMLL talent and bring them in and put them on television when MLW wants to do that. So I think that CMLL has always been a walled garden, of sorts. And from my experience and Ruben's experience working with them over the last number of years on, trying to do things in licensing or trying to do things with visas or trying to do this or that, they really would rather not put their energy directly into the U.S., but they're happy to make alliances with people who would want to, which I think AAA is the exact opposite, right? AAA really has continuously been trying to figure out how do we crack the nut of the United States and touring the United States, and AAA would love to be doing more in the U.S. And I do believe that time is coming as well. I think we've felt that multiple times in the past, but I do think that like 2025, I would expect to probably see. I honestly think that, and I don't know anything for certain, but reading the tea leaves, I think if Scott D'Amore was still in TNA, we might have seen some joint shows here like we saw in Mexico. And I think other people had kind of speculated on that as well. It's not, I'm not breaking any secrets here. But I didn't know that Dorian was going to come out on that pay-per-view and that they were going to do, their handshake and, hey, we're going to work together. And the first thing I thought was then it's great for AAA, really. Like this is a way for them to, maybe get some co-branded shows going where it's not all on them to book a Madison Square Garden and work with partners that might not really understand how to promote wrestling and, end up with these kind of attempts that have happened before where things just didn't hit on all cylinders.
So speaking of CMLL's like relationship to the US, what was it? I think the general manager, like an owner of the family, the owning family, came to Chicago for MLW. Perhaps they've been at shows before. I've just never seen it promoted as such. Like, what did you like take that as?
And I do believe he attended one of the AEW shows. Honestly, it is a big deal. They don't the office folk of CMLL the family that owns CMLL don't really get involved or appear much. I think when Sophia was kind of managing things for a moment, and she had moved from like the face of the PR of the company to heading up the company for a short while. She was kind of doing a little bit more of that outreach and appearing some places. But yeah, I actually thought that was sitting where we sit, where there's a lot of, we don't know if information actually makes it to the top of CMLL. Like there's a lot of middlemen, gatekeepers in CMLL. And there's also just I'll give you an example, right? Not that we want to dive into that all here, but when all this like visa nonsense was going on a few months ago, and a lot of the luchadors from CMLL ended up not being able to travel because there was kind of some miscommunication within CMLL. We were having conversations with a couple of the people who were kind of middlemen in CMLL. And they said, listen, we don't bring problems to the boss. We have to wait for the boss to say he wants to talk about a problem with us, and then we can give him our opinion on it. But just the culture here is not that we go and say, hey, there's a problem, you need to deal with it. Like, that's not how we work. And I thought that was really eye-opening, right? And I think that, so Salvador, showing up and being on the ground and being able to see really what was happening and what MLW was doing for them there, or what AEW is kind of doing there. I think that says a lot about both his dedication to trying to make some of those things work. And also maybe, wanting to kind of see with his own eyes, some certain things that are going on, positive in this case, but to just maybe be a little bit more involved. But again, I think that like the bottom line for them is having those right partners in the US and not having ambitions of, running their own tours in the United States.
So, and of course, we get look at just one example with MLW and doing really well in Cicero Stadium. But I think like they've been trying, certainly trying to find their way, probably more helped by the reported $20 million settlement in terms of finding their way. But I think that lucha flavor is becoming an essential component to what they do, not just like as like a one-off. This is like a lucha theme show, but like I think they really need lucha. I know it's fusion, which is a number of things, but I don't think like, and of course you want talent from Japan and whatever maybe, but that lucha component seems to be the key to them sort of like finding their niche and their way in the US.
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. I think that like, and maybe I've been privy to more marketing materials over the years than most people have, but I think MLW's always felt that way. I think that especially with their relationship with BN and how that's like the number one network for soccer, I guess, in the US and globally, in terms of sheer volume of soccer. I think that was always kind of part of the MLW strategy was let's make sure that people understand that we're bringing them really great lucha libre talent. And I think that obviously it's not always easy to work with the offices, and so they've gone through periods where they were working with AAA talent, and then, because AAA needed talent for taping on the same days or this or that, they weren't able to book certain people. And this is just off the top of my head, like memory. So if I'm misquoting any of this, Court, Jared, etc. I'm sorry. But then, so then they went with independents, but then, there's only so many kind of big name independents. And then now they kind of shifted that strategy to CMLL, and that's really working. And so I think that it's always been, like you said, their whole thing has been fusion, especially since the original MLW used luchadors as well. Park had been there, I think, in Super Crazy and others. But I think that they've always had this vision, and now they're finally kind of able to hit it on all cylinders, for lack of a better way to put it. But even just, the creation of Lucha Azteca and bringing in, the former Dario Cueto, and I think they've been trying to get here for quite some time, and now it's finally landed.
So before I realized they were going to put an image out there right away, when that dropped from CMLL, their like Fantastamania announcer with New Japan, like I kept having to like rewind Twitter announcement, screenshot. I was like, I got it. But what do you make of this? The first time in the U.S. in San Jose, Fantastica Mania 2024, New Japan presents CMLL.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of Gabe Ramirez, right? He's actually partnering with them to promote that, and great decision on their part, because he's drawing 1,000 people already, in that market constantly. And New Japan has done fairly well when they've gone to the San Jose Civic. Because we had been so intimately involved in the visas, we've known that this was in the works since last year. They wanted to have Fantastica Mania be a multi-continent, multi-country thing for this year, with Mexico and Japan and the US. And so, I think wrestling's number one power broker these days, Rocky Romero, very intimately involved in kind of, I think, being the guiding force to making this all happen. But I think it's great. I think the show is going to do fantastic because, like I said, Gabe already draws really well out here just for indie lucha libre with some top names. New Japan has drawn fairly well when they've come on their own, and really well at times, and then fairly well at other times. And now you're adding this kind of top tier CMLL element to it. I think it's a great market for it, and I think that the show should hopefully do really well. And I think that's, I say this all the time to some of our business partners, right? Pro wrestling is such an interesting industry because you can't wake up tomorrow and decide you're going to be a football promoter or a basketball promoter, really, right? But anybody can wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm a wrestling promoter now, right? All I got to do is book some talent. And, Ruben often tells a story about like how he first got involved in Lucha Libre, which was, fast forward a little bit, but back in the 90s, right? If you wanted to book a luchador, you had to have their home phone number and speak Spanish, right? And now we live in an era where everybody's on social media. If you want to wake up and promote a show in your town, not everybody's going to trust you, but you can reach out to wrestlers directly on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. So I think that a lot of times it comes down to what is that unique experience that you can bring to a show beyond just, I booked a bunch of wrestlers and I'm putting on some good matches. And I think the Fantastica Mania, much like, AEW's Forbidden Door type shows, right? There's just something special about, even if you had other shows where you have like you look at like PWG, or you look at like even GCW, right? These super indies, for lack of a better term, where you do have wrestlers from all these different countries competing. But I just even think that like, because Fantastica Mania has become such a well-branded event every year in Japan, there's meaning behind that brand. And I think that it's really cool to see it finally take place on U.S. soil, mixing in more U.S. talent than you would normally get. Because if you did it in Mexico, it's usually just New Japan versus CMLL. And if you do it in Japan, vice versa. So I think it'll be cool to kind of see how that additional element maybe plays in. And if there are, any other appearances that you wouldn't normally get on a Fantastica Mania.
So I'm going to finish it off with a fun one before I turn it over to John. You mentioned House of Glory. How involved do you get the sense Master P is in the promotion? And have you ever had the chance to correspond?
I have not had a chance to correspond. I don't know. It's really interesting. When we were going to when we were doing Expo Lucha for Philly, which obviously got completely jacked up because of COVID. And so, it was like basically done 2 years after we initially planned it. And so I don't remember where in the timeline we were, but at some point, I had reached out to somebody at House of Glory about some talent, and was basically told like, "Oh well, everybody's going to be exclusive now because things are really moving forward, and we've got to deal with Master P and his people." And so, okay, cool. Like, it's not going to work out for Expo Lucha. Listen, being around trying to make things happen with television, with bigger people, with partners, stuff takes forever. I fully believe that Master P is involved there. I think they need to have, I watched the first, I think we corresponded about that for a minute. I watched the first episode of Carneyland, right? I think it's a lot of fun. I think that it would have been better if this had happened 5 years ago and really could have given a kick to early NWA with Billy Corgan as the owner. And I think that it's similar to what House of Glory will hopefully be able to get to with Master P, and be able to kind of work with the fact that he's got a built-in audience. He's got people that would be interested, I think, to see him running a wrestling company. So I have no idea at this moment in time what his involvement is. They do great shows. I really like the product I've seen out of them. Everything I've seen has been really, really good. We've helped coordinate talent to go there a number of times, and I think it's there are so we live in a time where there are so many more possibilities for successful distribution of kind of what I would call more niche wrestling. And I think that there's a vibe to their product. It's just kind of a cool, hip vibe. And I think that if there's an opportunity down the road for P to be more involved in front of the camera, if that's still something that exists there, then I think it'd be cool to see.
Now, where could everybody follow Master Republic, find out what the latest is, find out what you guys going on? Give us all the plugs.
All right, so we kept it simple at Masked Republic on Facebook, Twitter /X, and Instagram. But I encourage you check out maskedrepubliccomics.com and see what we're doing there with the launch of the comics. Order at your local comic shop now on Massive Publishing, but also because Massive knows that there's a lot of wrestling fans that maybe don't have a local comic book shop or don't know where their local comic book shop is. They are making certain covers available online, and you can go to the Master Republic comic site for that. But yeah, everything for the most part is at Master Republic, and that's for our live events and our merchandising and all the other cool stuff to come. And yes, Lavie, I promise that we will, when this thing happens, I'll come back here and give you the lowdown first.
Looking forward. Thank you, Kevin. It's always a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, Lavie, just to finish this bad boy up, we'll do real quick. We'll talk about perhaps WB doing a loop down in Florida, and then also probably maybe some of you're very upset about the end of pay-per-view.
Yes, so just something that doesn't get mentioned as much, although we're aware of it, is what they call the coconut loop. Kind of thinking back to Steve Kearn's origins of running the FCW, but Jim Varsalane, a great reporter out there of Florida who's written for a number of publications, he had a really in-depth article about shows that they've been doing in Vero, Florida for a number of years. But the reason I highlighted it was it's kind of off the radar now. Everyone's aware that they're doing it, but what's actually going on and how well they're drawing and so on is not talked about as much. It's harder to tell because NXT uses a standard looking map from what I've seen thus far, that there's they call it the gold circle, general admission and so on. But according to the article, they've drawn about a few hundred there in that venue, which was surprising. I thought it was smaller numbers that they would typically do. So this might be an atypical space and in demand. So when I first heard the story of In Demand going out of business, I was like, okay, it used to be a big deal, but it's not that big a deal now. But somebody had a good point, which was to say that, those CZW type pay-per-views or which I referenced before, Bloodiest Brawls and whatever it may be, like, I don't know if they're going to be able to self-distribute anymore. I think that was through platforms like In Demand. So, on a smaller level, in terms of like content distribution and maximizing it, it may have an impact. So it's just something to watch, and for a long time fans and followers of the business, like, it's not as big a story as it once would be, but hearing In Demand is going out of business, like, kind of feels like a big deal.
Man, crazy. The end of pay-per-view. Just thinking of it. I know it's kind of dead anyway, but just thinking of it in our heads, like, the end of pay-per-view.
I know, John, I don't want to stream it, right? I need my pay-per-view 2 or 3 times a year.
Yes. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up and head towards the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Lavie, what do you got?
So follow Kevin Kleinrock, John Poz, and Lavie in the LinkedIn group, The Business of the Business, along with 73 other members at the moment, where we talk about the podcast, share ideas, get some news first, build community, and so on. Follow me on X at Lavie Marg, LAVIE-MARG, and check out some of my long-form articles on lioncubjobsearch.com.
All right. Thank you, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Thank you to Kevin Kleinrock. See everybody next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.